various people who were part of the Game B movement or who quickly found us or we found them have their own versions. People, in other words, have taken the idea and they've forked it. And, for Heather and me, the last chapter of our book talks about the fourth frontier, which is explicitly our take on what a Game B future would have to look like. For those who don't know what we're talking about, Game B wise, Game B is a very simple idea. It's not a plan, but it is an idea that our system is on a fatal trajectory and that it requires, if we are to persist, it requires that we find a better solution. And the key insight, the thing that makes it better than every other version of this idea, is that Game B, whatever it is, has to be game theoretically stable. It has to be an evolutionarily stable strategy. It has to beat Game A in its own terms. In other words, we can't say, here is a blueprint of a better society, now let's start a revolution, win the power to make it, etc. It has to be so good that it is effectively contagious and displaces Game A in a world that has been structured by Game A. And it is a non-utopian analytical approach to solving that problem. So anyway, I think those of us who understand why that has to be the general form of the solution effectively can't and won't walk away with it. We may never accomplish it, but we know that someone must. And until it is accomplished, effectively, the short time horizon of modern civilization is presently structured, and the potential extension, indefinite extension that could be achieved if we got to this Game B space, it's obviously the right thing to do, whatever the form that it takes might be.
Yeah, and I would just add one other thing. You hit all the biggest points. The other, and it's in this non-utopianism. This is critical, is that we have an empirical and experimental perspective. Many of the people involved in formulating the original Game B idea either had a background in complexity or were infected by it, or its near neighbors like evolutionary theory. And if you know anything about these domains, you know the ability to predict the unfolding of a complex system over any extended period of time is bupkis, right? You can't do it. And in fact, the whole definition of an emergence in complexity is something which cannot be predicted with any plausible amount of computation, at least from the current state of the pieces. And so very important in Game B thinking is that we have a theory, we sort of have a destination, but we hold it very lightly, and we try things. We probe systems, we build little things, we experiment, we analyze, and then we share the results horizontally, whether they worked or not. And that makes us totally different than guys that show up with this tome that says, here's the truth. If we just did this, we'll solve all mankind's problems. We know where that generally leads, which is to the gas chamber.
Yeah, to gulag, starvation, to gas chambers, right? That kind of thing. Yeah, exactly. I would say, I would counsel us to stop talking about vaguely knowing the destination. And I think if we talk in terms of knowing the trajectory, we know what direction we should be heading, but we also know that we will be surprised by the final structure if we allow ourselves to be taught by the complex system about what the real rules actually are. And as far as the utopianism goes, as you probably know, I've said many times, I think, that utopia is the worst concept that anyone ever came up with, right? It's this very seductive, impossible place, and that it has, as you point out, led to all kinds of tragedies of history. But when people hear you say that, they sometimes get the sense of like, oh, I'm no longer so interested because it sounds like some brutal, pragmatic future that isn't very exciting. And my point would be, look, in a complex system, we know that there are no perfect solutions. There is nothing like utopia, but take a good look at a hummingbird sometime. It's non-utopian. It's built with feedbacks, right? That's how it works. But
step at a time, somehow it got to the hummingbird. Isn't that amazing?
It got to the hummingbird. And if you look at it and you say, yeah, that's the level of imperfection we might be shooting for, it's pretty darn good, right? It's pretty close to what any rational person would call a miracle if you didn't know that there was a process that had built it up incrementally. And so anyway, non-utopian doesn't mean it couldn't be marvelous. It means it won't be marvelous right away. It will take a long time to get where we're going, and it will be surprising in its structure because there's no one on earth who can blueprint it from here.
Amen, brother. And by the way, the hummingbirds have just returned to our farm.
They've just come back here too. I never tire of watching them.
Never. We sit on our porch, hummingbird feeders on both ends, and watch them go at it. It's fun.
It's beautiful. I as of this morning, may be on the trail of a nest. I've never had a nest that I could watch them raise chicks in. So anyway, I'll keep you all posted on whether or not I figure out where it is.